Once upon a sunny morning in Mrs. Bumblebee's classroom, the children were buzzing with excitement. Today, Mrs. Bumblebee was going to teach them about the letter H. She wore her happiest hat and gathered the students around her favorite colorful mat. "Children," she began with a twinkle in her eye, "today we are going to learn all about the letter H. Can anyone tell me what sound the letter H makes?" The children thought for a moment, and little Henry raised his hand. "It sounds like huh, right?" "Exactly, Henry," Mrs. Bumblebee cheered. "The letter H sounds like huh." Now, let's think of some words that start with the letter H. Harry, the hyperactive hamster, jumped up with joy. "Hat!" he exclaimed, pointing to Mrs. Bumblebee's head. "Wonderful, Harry," Mrs. Bumblebee smiled. "Hat starts with H." Next, Hannah, holding her favorite teddy bear, softly said, "Heart." "Oh, how lovely, Hannah," Mrs. Bumblebee said, putting her hand over her heart. "Heart is another beautiful H word." Mrs. Bumblebee then walked over to her big board and wrote the letter H at the top. She drew a happy face next to it and asked, "Who else can think of more H words?" Hands went up all around the room. "Horse!" shouted Hugo, who loved visiting his uncle's farm. "Hug!" said Holly, whose favorite thing was getting big warm hugs from her mom. "House!" declared Haley, remembering the time she helped build a tiny house with her blocks. Mrs. Bumblebee clapped her hands. "You're all so smart. Isn't learning about the letter H fun? H is for hat, heart, horse, hug, house, and so many other happy words." Just then, the school bell rang for recess. As the children scampered outside, Mrs. Bumblebee called after them with a smile, "Don't forget about the letter H while you're playing. Have fun, heroes." And from that day on, whenever the children saw the letter H, they remembered that morning with Mrs. Bumblebee and the joy of learning new words that began with huh.